Good afternoon, ladies and gents. We are coming at you on Tuesday afternoon. It is April 9th, 2019. Thank goodness we're leaving 2018 behind us, at least for the crypto markets. With that being said, what we are going to do today on this episode with Ledger is just kind of a state of the market. So we're going to talk about the past couple of weeks of price action from Bitcoin, what it entails for altcoins, setups we're looking at that we like, things we're seeing that we don't like perhaps. And just kind of give our thoughts. We haven't really done a market update in the past couple of weeks on the show. So especially given the big move in Bitcoin, we figured it'd be good to talk a little bit about it, get everybody else's thoughts, and especially hear from one of the best traders in the game, Ledger Status. So Ledger, how you doing, bro?
I'm good. Feels like the pressure's on now. Not there are times where I don't think I agree with your compliment, but I do appreciate it nonetheless.
Well, that's what makes you a good trader is you don't get too much of an ego and you always, are questioning like biases and stuff like that. I think that's pretty essential to remaining a good trader. So we'll say it for you. Don't worry. But
he's a humble man. He's a humble man.
Yes, indeed.
Good trade.
So the first thing we want to talk about is obviously front and center in the past couple of weeks, fresh in everybody's mind, is this big move that Bitcoin had. From a low of, I think, recently around like 3,800, 4,000 level that was at, spiked up really, really quickly to about 53, 5,400, settling a bit in that 5,000 range over the past week or so. So Ledger, what have your thoughts been on this move, possibly what this move means in sort of a broader trend?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of what happened, I was really closely watching the area around April 1st. And it was really interesting to me that the pop happened on April 1st, right at the beginning of a new quarter. I'm real interested in what things like derivative options markets are meaning to crypto now, like if that's going to be more important to the markets, derivatives markets in general, but options especially. And
they've been getting some good volume.
Yeah, I think Prince was at $100 million that dropped off of open interest on March 29th.
Yeah,
so
like it's going to be pretty legit. So you got to take notice of it.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if there's some people that were, powerful enough to prevent a move like that from happening when it may have otherwise happened because they were selling 4, 5, 6K options. So stuff like that interests me in terms of timing. More importantly, from a pure chart perspective, is if you go all the way to the weekly, what I was watching closer than anything else was the weekly Bollinger Band midline. So the Bollinger Band midline is the 20 SMA, just a simple standard moving average. And the 20 SMA or the Bollinger Band midline on a weekly basis was basically the hammer on every move in the bear market. Like we couldn't sustain any move beyond that zone. So we were just grinding up there week after week. And when we were just sitting there on that Bollinger Band midline and the bands were really tightening on the weekly basis, and then we had this like kind of subtle week initially. So we basically printed a nothing candle, like absolutely no volatility. Then we had a little bit of promise, and that week closed out and like bam, we popped, and we popped hard. And that was a really great sign to at least lean bullish. Once we completed that week above that midline, that's where I started to have stronger conviction, because we could have easily been rejected off of that and gone back to, bear market, go test the 200 week. But yeah, so I was watching that really closely. And from a spot positioning standpoint, as long as we didn't go below the 200 week moving average definitively, then I felt okay. And we only have so much history in Bitcoin, but the 200 week moving average, both in any legacy market, but also the 1 or 2 times we really have anything to look at in crypto, that 200 week held throughout the bear market in 2015. So that was kind of my pack it up. Maybe the 1800 crew is right type of like line. And the fact that we were at 4K and that 200 week was at 3,500 in terms of spot positioning, that was enough of a like zone for me to just feel okay trusting it. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? Were y'all
Yep.
watching that at all?
Yeah. That whole move, like it blew me away when it happened too, right? Like the whole move came down into like an hour sequence almost, right? And it just went insane when it happened.
Yeah. Did y'all think
Yeah.
there were going to be more offers than there were? Because I mean, people, you would think there were just going to be a lot of sellers throughout that
Mhm.
range, but it was much more of a vacuum than I would have anticipated, I think.
Yeah, like it's like somebody just came in, it came in with some size, started buying up, and all of a sudden short liquidations kicking in hard, and even there's a bit of a volume gap too, when it comes down to the volume profile, and it's like we're just sliding through the zone. It's just it's been really interesting to watch. Yeah, there you go. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I kind of got lucky because I was watching the 5 minute candles on a chart. Like as the move happened, I was just like being like a crackhead, get bored easily. So I'm watching the 5 minutes, like anything happened. And when it started shooting up, I haven't seen a move like that since easily like heart of last alt season, where something
Yeah.
would just start taking off and it looks like the candle is just pushing the screen up like nonstop. And every single time you think it has like a little pullback, just shoots higher and higher. And like Prince said, it all happened within like an hour or two. So it was fascinating to watch. It's unlike
I
anything
think
I've seen
at
in
one
charts
point it
in a
was
long
up
time.
like 25% that evening when it was happening. It was just like, holy crap, here we go.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is doing its thing. This is like, it's classic Bitcoin right there.
Yeah. On the daily, I think it did go up over 20%.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I mean, people were hedging into it. I was like,
Mhm.
not in like size, but on like a degen level.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
everybody maintains those accounts, I think.
Oh yeah.
Like I was looking for the 200-day moving average for so long,
Mhm.
and people troll you about that, and that my Q1 target was 5,300, but not even though it happened right after, like a day after Q1 ended.
Mhm.
5,300 was where the 200-day moving average was, uh, like in January, and I made that prediction in like
Yeah.
January 1 or something. So that 200-day moving average spent months coming down. So my target by the time the move actually occurred was really only around 4,600,
Hmm.
and I thought we might blow through it a little bit, but man, we blew through it, and we blew
Yeah.
through it in what, 30 minutes or
It
something.
was, yeah, fast and with conviction. It didn't give you much time to kind of look at it and evaluate it. It was going.
Yeah, it was a heck of a move. I saw a chart. I can't remember who put it out, so I apologize to whoever did. But you know how they have in legacy markets sometimes like the percentage of action in
Mhm.
just a small number of days in the market. So if you're out
Yeah.
of the market, you miss some of the biggest gains.
Mhm.
With Bitcoin, it's even more extreme because some of these big green candles and red candles for that matter, but since Bitcoin's gone up so much over history, like if you're out of the like best 10% of days, like you might lose money because
That's funny. Yeah.
so many of the moves happen in just like a small percentage of days. So I'm glad I was in it, certainly from a spot positioning. I was, in terms of on margin, I was on various things, but I'd actually reduced my exposure to like pure Bitcoin margin
Okay.
because of being there on the Bollinger Band
Mhm.
midline, and like it seemed like it would be better to try to get back on that train from like say 4,300 or something like that rather than staying long into 41, 42. But like
Mhm.
y'all said, like you just didn't have time to do much of anything
Oh,
once it actually was going down. So
yeah, it was fast. It's been a long time since I've seen a move to the upside like that. It was something. It was beautiful to watch.
yeah, everybody was excited about the return to volatility, I think, unless
Yeah.
people got caught upside down,
Yeah.
which I wouldn't
There
recommend
was
it anyway, but I know it
there was a
happened.
few. There was a few getting caught with their pants down with shorts. And that's a tough situation to be caught in if you got a short because it was moving so fast. Mex, if you think you're getting onto Mex to, if you don't got your stops already placed, and even then, you don't even know, like, hopefully you set your stops in a way that, you're not going to get absolutely burnt when the liquidations start rolling in. Yeah, that was a crazy situation. And what even, I guess, like a before the movie had happened, a lot of people were getting auto deleveraged on longs and stuff like that too. Apparently,
Yeah, the
like it was.
futures contract, I don't trade BitMEX personally, but the futures contract, they had a error, I guess, and I think
Mhm.
they corrected those balance issues with people, but they were auto deleveraging futures positions, and I don't know, man.
That's
It, wa-
that's a sketchy thing that, the timing of it all, like where people start getting auto deleveraged, and then next thing you know, Bitcoin just goes bonkers. Like,
yeah, and
you hate to be
that's
the
what the insurance
conspiracy
fund is
guy.
supposed to be for.
Yeah, exactly right. You hate to be the conspiracy guy, but when the timing is like that tight to each other, it's like, huh, that's a little interesting. Like,
Yeah, and for people that don't know how that works, like basically that insurance fund lives for the times where participants on the exchange are overweight in one direction and the move happens, they're all right, and essentially the exchange is eating some losses uh, on the move itself, and the insurance fund helps cover to make sure that everyone is allowed to take home their profit. And when they're liquidating people, they're building these things.
yeah,
So they have this whatever thousands of Bitcoin
it's a
available for that, but it
yeah.
didn't trigger the way it was supposed to. So they auto deleveraged instead. It ended up being an error. I don't think it's anything malicious personally, but it
Yeah.
was probably like gut wrenching emotionally for people
Oh,
that got an email saying they were deleveraged when they thought they were about to make like a 5 or 10x
yeah.
on their account
I
or something.
I knew a few guys, and it was just like, it was just the classic like hands up, like, WTF, like what the fuck, like okay, like,
Yeah. And the funny thing too is like those futures contracts go the craziest
yeah,
during these moves. Like you can get upside down pretty easily. Like if you're long one and short the other, and it starts
mhm,
the gap widens on you during the move because they're less liquid, but everybody's going
yeah.
in there and market buying, market selling, and like the all of a sudden they're like $300 or $400 apart.
I've been on
And
the wrong side of that before. Yeah.
oh yeah, and it can be like when Bitcoin went, let's say like when it came off 6,400, dropped to 5,300, like futures markets could have been in the mid 4Ks. Like it can be a
Mhm,
$800,000 move, and
mm, yeah,
if you're on the futures market and it's like going super elastic on you, you can just get smoked on it.
yeah,
Vice versa, that's why people are looking for it on the opposite side because futures might have gone all the way up and hit 6K, and they
mhm,
want a piece
yeah,
of that. So yeah,
exactly.
wild
So
stuff.
what do you
Most people just shouldn't be on that. I mean, it's just a
Yeah,
it's
I
a bummer.
completely agree. It's yeah, if you're like fresh to it all, it's definitely not. Just observe. You don't need to dabble in. Don't need to jump in feet first, because, well, that's what I did, and it usually doesn't end too well at the start. So,
Killer, what were you saying?
I was just gonna say, so after this like gigantic green candle on the Bitcoin chart, what do you make of the week or so of daily candles we see after that? It's sort of this like you can see it on the chart. For anybody who's listening and not watching on YouTube, check out the YouTube channel. You can look at exactly what we're looking at. What do you make of that little bit of action that's happened
Y-
after that big candle?
Yeah, so I think it would be super entertaining if this just kind of grinded its way up and didn't really have the pullback that I'm anticipating. But typically, after a move like this, you expect some degree of retrace.
mhm,
And, uh, you know, what happens is the longer it consolidates, the more and more there's like FOMO in the market, people afraid they're just going to miss another leg up.
mhm,
And my thing is an additional leg up. It could certainly occur, but I don't think these are like super smart longs in
mhm,
any sense of like a swing position, like something that you're going to hold for a long time. Like I think if we get a move up, maybe we hit 5,400, maybe we hit 5,500, but you could just be selling into massive amounts of offers. There, people are happy to unload on you, or I'm sorry,
mhm,
rather buying into those offers where people are happy to unload on you. And
yeah,
what we're seeing now is, I don't know if it's record levels, but there's only so many times, even in the bull market, the RSI got this high, like
mhm,
87 on the initial move, and we're making some divergent legs right now, meaning we're a little tired. The Stoke is topped, like everything is pointing to say this is a pullback on the
mhm,
daily. But what's fascinating is if you go to like a 4 hour, you could draw like an ascending triangle where it still looks pretty bullish. Like maybe there's another move up. Maybe we're going to hit 5,700 or something. But once it breaks up, like how much are people going to FOMO into that? If we extend sideways without significant dumps, these moving averages, the trend indicators, all those things, they'll start to move up, and then maybe the move down will be a little less intense, or whatever you want to call it, like a little less extreme. If you compare it to the dump down that we had, like you would have said, oh yeah, well, we just dumped to 5,500. We're going to have to like retrace that a little bit before we keep going down. So I'm not going to sell. I'm going to wait till we retrace 6K. Well, we never did because people were so ready to sell that they said, screw that. And we went to 3K, and we're just now getting back to those levels. So, it can go on for months. And the more that happens, the more extreme it could get. So on a baseline, for me, I'm not really interested in longs, but I'm not really interested in overly reducing like spot exposure either, because before you know it, like this thing could be pounding up into that 6K resistance. And that's where I'm really interested, because we're in no man's land right now. And it's hard to trade. Like this is a hard zone to trade. I've been arguing with friends that I greatly respect like for 3 or 4 days now. I'm like, look guys, we got to hit like 4,800 at least. Like give me something, just like just flirt back with those moving averages. I don't need much, but like just get back there a little bit.
Classic Bitcoin would be a continuation higher and then a sharp dump, and then we can kind of regroup and let it consolidate a bit and get itself together, right? So
I'm willing to say that will definitely happen. Like I do not doubt that will happen. The question is whether we're going to be $1,000 higher before it does.
The amount of times like this kind of situation that I've played before in the past, and it's like, it should dump. Okay, let's start building a nice short position. I'm going to be smarter than the market kind of thing, right? And then pop, it just continues higher really hard, right? And it's just classic Bitcoin, right? It's like suck you in, spit you out. And, if it's kind of like in a zone like this where it's, like you said, in no man's land, there shouldn't really be a huge hurry to me to trade this one on leverage or anything.
Yeah. And I just pulled up a chart for anyone that is watching. And I just highlighted some of the times where we had RSI levels that were this high. And, some of them did continue on, but they all got that spike that Prince is talking about right now. Like eventually those chickens come home to roost. And like if I look at this RSI trend line on the daily, and RSI trends on the daily are real interesting to me. Because I mean, you look at those touches on a diagonal like that, but we're like way above it. So eventually the temperature of the market, even if it doesn't go to like some kind of oversold position, it'll come back and cool down a little bit, maybe get back into the 60s or the 70s and probably tap this trend line. And that's when, if that happens and when it happens, that's when people are going to be clamoring for like, oh, new lows. Bitcoin just went down $500 in a day. Screw you guys. This is just another trap, bull trap. We're going to 2K. That's where you want to be a buyer. Like that's where you say like, I'm going to step in. And if you can find some confluence in terms of what's lining up, then that's good stuff. And in terms of what that confluence may look like, I mean, on the daily, the 20, because of this move, we have the 20-day moving average is about to cross the 200, and that's right around that 4,600. And it's also like retesting some of these levels in terms of the broader price action. I could even see a wick, like a real, like if we have a fundamental, who knows what happened, we could wick down into 4,200 or whatever. But I think those are going to be buying opportunities personally.
Yeah, I think a lot of stuff down there, it's going to get soaked up. Personally, I believe we're going to start now forming, kind of the accumulation zone, right? We've now been anything sub 4K, it to me is now, it is like it gets down there and, that's a good buy zone. If you're buying spot, accumulate, you don't got to go in all at once, but that's a good zone to be accumulating in.
Yeah, sub 4K, that's back to the areas where I'm worried again.
Yeah.
Depending on where that 200 week is, like that 200 week is my North Star in terms of
Okay.
like protection in the bear, like in the market, because I'm
Mhm.
willing to say that the bear market is over,
Mhm.
unless that dies. But I
Yeah.
don't necessarily think that means the bull market has begun. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean we hop into a hype cycle. I
Yeah.
think we could be in jail, but on the next level up. Like, say we
Mhm.
were in the basement, now we're on the first floor. But we're not in high rise territory. We're not partying
Yeah.
on the rooftops. But we could be 4,400 to 5,800 for the next year,
Yeah.
maybe more. And I think that's what people need to prepare for.
Honestly, yeah, and I think it really comes down to that 6K zone, right? Like not out of the woods until that 6K, that used to be a massive support, which is, to me, it's going to be a resistance zone, needs to be tested. And until it's, breaks that and we get some, conviction on that, not fully out of the woods, right?
Yeah, and I want to point at something that's on the weekly chart and just put this 6K area in context. One of the things that I think would be hysterical is what if we just go right through that zone?
Jeez, I'm looking at this
uh,
right now. Yeah. And that would be
so
something.
I've got I'll turn I've got the cloud up for anybody that does cloud stuff. It's just doubled cloud settings on a weekly chart. But I want to show the 50-week moving average as well. Yeah, there we go. So the 50-week moving average right now is at around 5,700.
Mm.
The weekly Kijun with doubled settings is around 7,500. Uh, I would not be surprised, and I'll go ahead and throw this out there, but I could see another candle that's like the weekly we just experienced, that was just extremely euphoric, that taps
Mhm.
above the 6K accumulation range. Everybody is like all about it, and then it just
Yeah.
gets hammered by that weekly Kijun and closes
That
like
would
all the
be
way, yeah,
Oh,
all
that
the
would
way
be
back
almost the
under the
perfect
6K.
move. Yeah, that would be,
Yeah.
yeah. Like you want to talk about, classic Bitcoin, that would be to me it right there.
Yeah. So where you go all the way to 7,500 like intro week, and
Yeah,
then you come back and you close the weekly at like 6,100 or something like
yeah.
that. I
And
think
it
that
would
would be
suck. Yeah.
hysterical.
People would flood in just on the break of 6K because it's like, okay, well, that's all they were watching. And that is, 6K is a big topic to a lot of people watching Bitcoin right now. And
It
yeah,
should
that
be.
would, yeah, exactly. Right. And so that, if that move were to happen, that would be just, classic Bitcoin, right? Like
The
that would be,
thing the thing that I don't quite understand, like, or I don't quite believe, and maybe it is, like, Bitcoin is very technical. Look at these touches on the 200 week. Like,
Mhm.
that's extremely technical.
Yeah.
The move past the Bollinger Bands, like, Bitcoin just operates so technically,
Yeah.
because there's fewer fundamental drivers, so people are watching charts.
Mhm.
But is the market really going to make it so easy to just sell all your spot at 6,200 and go
No.
short and wait for 4K to come back and you make 33%
Yeah.
times whatever leverage you had? Is it really
Never.
going to do that? And I
Never.
don't think it is. I really don't
No.
think it is. So I'm prepared for, or I want to be prepared for who knows what type of shenanigans.
Yeah.
Um,
I find, yeah.
I'm throwing that
For-
warning out there. We can follow up on this in a month and see if I was crazy or not.
I actually, I'm along with that one. That one, I like that one.
The
I think, like, regardless too, it's just like obviously it remains to be seen what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. But I think a big takeaway from this previous past couple of weeks is that perhaps the trend is shifting, and I don't want to fully commit to it yet, but it certainly seems like there's kind of a longer term turnaround.
Yeah, and I just pulled up one more thing. I popped the 200 day and the 200 week. So I mentioned the 20 week. Well, the 20 week and the 200 day were really pretty in line with each other throughout the
Mhm.
bear market, and um, you can see to me the change in market structure that's occurred because we've passed that 200 day.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't want to ignore that, I guess is my point. Like, I think there's a great chance that the bottom is in
Mhm.
and we're going to accumulate in a new range. and have a new jail. And like 4 months from now, maybe we'll just be like, oh man, we didn't expect all this sideways.
Yeah. I agree with
That's
yeah,
definitely what I'm
like
leaning towards too.
bottom
Yeah.
being in statement. I definitely agree with that. I don't really see us making any kind of new lows, but I do think there's going to be a sideways range for a bit, and then we can start trying to get some momentum if we're going to start going higher.
Yeah.
And it could suck. It could be, months. So,
well, there's some interesting deadlines this year. So my buddy Josh Olsowich or Carpe Noctem, he was talking about on our podcast about October 10th or something like that. I think there's some deadlines with Mt. Gox coins. There's a final deadline on the Bitcoin ETF, the Bitwise one or whichever one's still in play. So there's some stuff like that that is coming in October. So like maybe we just range about and chop people up until then. I don't know.
yeah.
Usually these things do have some kind of fundamental trigger. I really want to know what y'all think about like the media was like, why did this move happen? Bitcoin traders struggle to explain it.
How funny was that, right? And the best part was it was on April Fool's Day. So, you just, okay, let's try and create some bullshit narrative and go with it. And, you saw what they were saying. Oh, it was a joke on Twitter that caused it to spark. And it was like, no, it wasn't. Like, I don't like, I'm not really one to buy into the whole, well, what is the reason for the move? Like what, because that's the thing, right? The media likes to try to find a narrative. There's always got to be a narrative to them for any kind of move. And to me, it's just, you look at how much it's gotten crushed, right? The price has been crushed. You look at where it bounced, it found some support there at the lows. It's just, it's in a volume gap. It's just how it is. It's a good short squeeze. It's, it doesn't really need a specific narrative in a sense, right? Like, and that's the thing. They want a fundamental reason at times, and Bitcoin doesn't always need a fundamental reason to move, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So moving on just a little, or is there anything else on the Bitcoin chart you wanted to talk about, Ledger?
I threw up on this Brave New Coin liquid index chart, which is like a full history. This 5555 level is pretty interesting to me. It's totally random, but like this is if everybody's waiting for 6K, if we're gonna say like, okay, me and Prince are right, you're not getting 6K. 6K is too easy. You don't get 6K, either you maybe get 7.5, or what if you just don't get there? So like let's say we break up from this mid time frame stuff and you do get a move up, everybody's like, oh yeah. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if some random level like this, where it's like in between some weeklies, we bounced off of it last November. It's a round number. It's another one that Josh likes, is these random numbers. Like, what if we just tap 5555 and then we get hammered back down? Like, this is just hard to predict, and this is why I would just give people some caution about trying to like nail every move on margin. And this is words of wisdom from myself as well. Everybody wants to catch that move. Like, you want that next move. And, sometimes just taking it nice and slow is the way to go. So,
yeah, absolutely. Holding, it's never a bad thing just to have a position in spot. It doesn't always have to be levered up. You don't always have to be on margin.
Yeah. And the one takeaway I have from where we are right now is that we're in no man's land. Like, it just feels.
Yeah. To me, this is, it's kind of a no trade zone for me. Like where it is, it's, anyways, for myself, it's not something that I'm looking to jump in any positions on in margin anyways. Just sit in spot.
Just to add on what you said, Ledger, in terms of like moving slow, I think people got to keep in mind too, it's like slower than you think, because like a lot of people tell themselves like, okay, I got to move slow, and it's like one day later, they're like, all right, open up 50x on X, like long, it's like, I waited a day. It's better than my normal like 6 hour wait, but like you really have to like take like a few days minimum and just kind of like, I think especially the trap that people can fall into with these kind of markets, with that kind of move, is you make a big gain and you take your profit and you sit pretty for like, whether it be 5 minutes or a couple hours, and you're like, okay, time to get back in. And like, you got to be very careful on that ensuing trade, because oftentimes it's like pure emotion driving you. And like, you got to really have a conversation with yourself and be like, is this stupid? Like, am I just getting greedy?
Well, it's funny right now too, right? Because of that move we've seen, now I'm starting to get people coming out of the woodwork like, hey, I've been watching Bitcoin for a while. I've been just avoiding even touching it, but this move has got me feeling pretty antsy. Like I want to throw money into it now again. And I find it kind of a weird, comment, but I understand it. But it's like, just it's the Luke Martin saying, just move slower, just don't be in a hurry because, the market's not going anywhere.
Yeah, credit to Luke, because a lot of people say that, but the amount that he really reiterates it is, I think, important because it's easy to
It's
get caught up.
it's a crucial point. Like it's yeah.
I think one part is like don't underestimate how serpentine the market can be. What I mean by that is like there may be a trend up or down, but there's going to be a lot of wiggling in between. And so like especially when you zoom out on like the daily charts, you can see like, oh, this could easily pull back to 4,500 for a while, like no problem, there's a lot of room down. And I think it's just like you can't reiterate it enough. Like slow down, take your time. There is a time, where it's like you got to get in, but vast majority of the time, you're better off probably waiting a little bit, I would say.
And I think that goes with taking profit too. Like, people were so scarred by the bear market. Like, people were taking profit all the way up that night, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And, and you're like, dang, I just could have waited until the next daily close and see what happens.
Yeah.
But who hadn't had some random altcoin that they're bag holding that goes up 70% overnight and then wicks back to like plus 2%? So it's easy to get scared and like feel like you got to hurry. But if we have a real asset, I would say, Bitcoin is it. And, there's probably a little bit of room to just be patient, wait for a daily close, maybe wait for a weekly close and just see what shapes up and take for, the next step as it kind of makes itself more clear.
Yeah. So moving on from the Bitcoin chart, I want to talk a little bit about alts, and you can work in like what the Bitcoin action has meant in your opinion for that alt's future or alts in general. But are there any alts in particular that you're looking at, whether because you like the market structure, you like the fundamentals? Just kind of walk us through what you've been looking at on that side over the past couple of weeks.
So I think what I want to start with is just volatility. So volatility meaning like how much anticipated move over the course of a period. And the more anticipated move you get from Bitcoin, the more volatile it is. That's what causes Bollinger Bands to blow out and other things like that. And what happened was a lot of these alts runs have happened throughout this year while volatility in Bitcoin was just steadily decreasing because we were consolidating in that range. And altcoins versus Bitcoin melted because we instantly basically 10x the amount of daily volatility that we experienced. And now we've just kind of been simmering off of that. But what's been interesting is a lot of altcoins have responded fairly negatively to that, like they're anticipating another bout of volatility. And I say that since like day 2. On day 2 or so, a lot of altcoins, I got Litecoin pulled up here, for instance. Like it died during the move and then it just went freaking nuts.
Yeah.
And I think this is basically these are volatility reactions. But now what we're seeing is alts trying to figure out like, hey, what's Bitcoin going to do? Is it going to make the whole house rumble? Do I need to go and hide? Or can I like come out and play? And as Bitcoin volatility settles down, like people aren't anticipating an immediate move or, like it just looks clear that Bitcoin's going to consolidate for a while, then that presents opportunities in altcoins. Versus the USD pair, as long as Bitcoin stays strong, I think most of those altcoin USD pairs will be okay. But you might not have great overall like alpha. Like you might be, losing relative to Bitcoin, especially in those volatile moments. But there is still strength in altcoins kind of across the board, but not everywhere. Like not every setup is great. Like I just showed Litecoin and it has had tremendous moves, but now it's basically on a Bitcoin relative basis at some of its historically higher end levels. Like holding Litecoin over 0.02 has just been a dangerous game historically.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably important to try to play those ranges. One of the most difficult to play right now would be like Ethereum and probably buy, like a carryover. a lot of the Ethereum ecosystem coins because Ethereum looks pretty good against the dollar. It looks like Bitcoin, but less. That's not the one I wanted to pull up. It looks like what Bitcoin has done, but less. But it looks like if one was going to continue on and go higher, I think it would probably be Ethereum versus the dollar. Like I think it might have a little room left. But if you look at the Bitcoin chart, like it just doesn't give you a lot. It looks like it broke down from like a multi-month pennant thing or something. It just looks kind of ugly. It's hard to make much of it. And it broke down from its 200-day moving average and then recovered it. And it just looks like Chop City.
It could end up being just a gnarly inverse head and shoulders that's somehow making like a second shoulder there. It's like, because it's seen those happen before, right? And so who knows?
Yeah, like the left shoulder was kind of crap and the right shoulder had like a double dip. And yeah, maybe it's true. And maybe we'll go up and test like 0.055-ish was like a double tap in terms of where we had support and then broke down from. Eventually, I think we will see Ethereum at those levels. I just don't know what those will be relative to the dollar. And what you want to do is you want to find altcoin strength at the same time you have Bitcoin strength, depending on your macro plan, I guess. But on the big time frames, we've had just really important market shifts in altcoins. And for example, like these 50-day moving averages crossing the 200-day moving averages. And a lot of these have collided as well. I want to pull some up. What are some of the altcoin runs that we've had that have been nice? Let's look at what's that one called? ADA. ADA is just, I mean, it's just a glorious example of chart patterns and measured moves. And what happened there was this thing just based and created a somewhat nice head and shoulders. It's not as ugly as what that potential Ethereum one is.
Yeah.
But what I see on ADA is when it was done, every single moving average it had was in the same exact spot. And when it broke up from that, that was your sign to say like, this baby is going to go tap some higher levels. And then it completed the head and shoulders and it never even retested it. They just went and made that whole measured move up to the resistance zone. And then it showed weakness, but it's because it hit like these longer term resistance levels. If you look at this and you compare it to like what that Ethereum chart was, like you could see the case for Ethereum 0.05 or whatever it was, just looking at this ADA chart. But ADA hit the measured move of the pattern that was clear, and now it's not got as clear of a pattern. If anything, now it looks like it's ready to continue rolling over a little bit. And
it's dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just want to take the move you get from an altcoin because you know what? If the altcoin went up relative to Bitcoin, you got more Bitcoin now. And some altcoins are going to pull a freaking Raven and go like 5x or more, and you're going to be salty about it. But anytime you increase the amount of Bitcoin that you have in your possession, you've done pretty well in my book.
Exactly.
And you just want to stack that Bitcoin because what you really don't want to happen, and this happened to a lot of people, is like you get stuck holding altcoin bags that just bleed while Bitcoin is doing awesome. And then like you're just hoping that you can kind of get back to some amount of Bitcoin that you've had in the past or whatever. So I think playing it safe with altcoins for a while, taking the profits that you get from the moves that are clear setups. There's 1,000 altcoins. You don't have to be in all of them. So
exactly.
Taking it nice and slow. But I love this ADA setup. Like we had such clear setups that were just really nice. And if I made a mistake in this past little run that we had over the course of a month or two, is I was trying to time it too much rather than saying like, you know what, these 4 or 5 or 6 alts look amazing. I'm going to sit and be patient in these. Like, and that's one of the hard things to manage when you're looking for altcoins. But we're clearly now in an area where a lot of altcoins that ran have retraced. And then it just depends on the altcoin in terms of whether it's retraced to a zone that is a good buy or not. And a full retrace is not necessarily what you're looking for. Really, you're looking for higher lows and stuff like that. So that's what you need to be seeking out.
Yeah. Ledger, let's talk a little bit about a coin that you tipped me off to probably a couple months ago, Loom, and what you're seeing on that chart and maybe what the volume profile of that is showing you.
Yeah, Loom is an interesting one. It's listed on Coinbase. Did you guys know that?
I think I heard something about that.
Yeah, the book on it is freaking terrible. I tried to buy it for my kids one time, and like even my kids' account, which I'm telling you, it's not like the craziest sized account in the world. It was like, I can't buy this. Like they have too much money to get a little position in Loom.
That's funny.
Yeah, so like I would have had to send money to Binance or somewhere else to actually get them a position in Loom. So I didn't actually trade it. But it had a nice move. Similar, I played it pretty simple in terms of what I was looking for on a lot of these. I was looking for moves to the 200, and then I was looking for moves that retested the 200 and retested accumulation zones and get them from there. And that's what Loom did. What's interesting about Loom is it moved back, and it's now sitting right back on the 200-day moving average. And it's kind of in a tricky zone, and it's not unique in this, where if Bitcoin has another highly volatile move and Loom doesn't go with it, relative to Bitcoin, Loom could basically go back to jail and have another leg down, another, it could go back and retest the full accumulation zone, another 20% down relative to Bitcoin. But the upside is that it goes right back and hits the zones where it's already tapped, and like it goes there or higher. And that's like 47, 45, 50% on my chart. So what you can do is you can set up what's your risk reward on a trade like this. And you can do this in TradingView just with the long and short tools. And you can say, look, I don't want this baby to go back into the death zone. So I'm going to find myself a stop. Usually it's like some kind of mental, like a manual stop, because you could get wicked out pretty easy. But you set a rule for yourself. Like if I get a daily close that's like definitively above the 200-day moving average, I don't want to go back to jail. So I'll stop out, and you lose 5% or whatever, but you don't lose 20%. And more importantly, you don't lose the next month or 2 or 3 or however long it takes to go back into that accumulation zone.
Yeah.
And then your reward section is to go back up to where it's already gone, and then maybe even above. So when you do that on balance, if you do that with more than one of these altcoins, some of these are going to work, some of them won't. But having the ability, the fortitude to say I'm in or I'm out is going to be important, because, all of us that participated in 2017, we all bag held something. Pretty much anybody that was in altcoins probably ended up bag holding something. And bag holding when you don't know what Bitcoin's going to do is a scary thought. And I don't really want to be doing that. So on these ones that retraced, they look attractive from a levels standpoint, but it doesn't mean I just want to stay in them if they go back into the jail and reaccumulate for a long time.
That's the thing, right? There's a lot of coins out there. It's, when it comes to selection, it's a pretty diluted market in that sense. So not every altcoin is going to move the same. You're going to have, maybe a group that seem to have a lot of strength, and then you're going to have another group where you're looking at them and you're like, well, do something. It's like, come on, like you're just bleeding out, and that's how it is now.
And Killer, I'm going to pump your bags here, because I think one of the things to pay attention to is, what has this coin got going on, like fundamentally? And I think too many people, they forget about, like, some of these are basically like dead. There's some quasi bankrupt company that is praying their altcoin is going to go up so that they can dump all their coins onto the market. And projects like Loom, they have some really interesting stuff going on in the gaming space. Like Neon District is based off of Loom, and like they're doing a lot of really interesting scaling stuff. Another one that I like is ENG. They have a ton of stuff coming out around staking. Disclosure, I do have a position in it, and it has a similar setup to Loom, where it retraced some of the initial move, and it's back to where I consider like an attractive zone. But fundamentally, I like the project, and I feel like there's fundamental reasons why it can pump in the future. Even Tezos, Killer, I know this is one of your babies, but like
my boy,
it turned out I was buying the crap out of Tezos when it was in its accumulation area. And at times I felt pretty stupid, because I was like, dadgummit, when is this thing going to pump?
Do something.
Yeah. But when it did, it turned out like I was taking profits and basically selling my bag to Coinbase, because it was all about like Coinbase doing staking stuff. And that felt pretty great, but I think a coin like Tezos, like they got too much money and too many people working on it to not have fundamental drivers ahead. So that's just one I'm going to keep on my chart, and I'm going to like look for buying opportunities on a project like that.
And I got to think like the Coinbase connection. I mean, I have to think that means there will be an exchange listing there before too long, because it seems weird that they would have staking services, but you wouldn't be able to buy it there, right?
To me, it's just a precursor. To me, it's
but I got a question for you guys. Does that matter? Like
that's
I was
true,
gonna say,
right?
yeah. At this point, the Coinbase pump is like not even a thing. It's like a meme from 2 years ago, basically.
Yeah, I have to think like a Binance listing, and it turned out Binance is also doing some staking. Like they're going to enable Tezos staking in the whatever that wallet, the Trust wallet.
Trust wallet, right?
Yeah.
And so I got back in Tezos, and then I sold it while I was still in profit because I was worried about this retrace from Bitcoin. So I don't technically own any Tezos right now. I probably am over trading. Just full disclosure.
So with Tezos, it's like on the Bitcoin chart, it's a little bit ugly in terms of like formation. But I will say
like
there's some
gigantic
volume.
Head and Shoulders.
Yeah, it's hideous. But on the like the dollar chart, which there is like a fair bit of Tezos volume on just the USDT and US dollar charts, it's like a perfect bull pennant forming on the daily. Like just flawless, like perfect triangle coming through. And so if we can like kind of break out of that, I think there could be fireworks ahead. I mean, obviously disclosure, I have some as well. So I'm biased,
I do think that it'll end up being that Tezos is still probably cheap right now.
Yeah, I think so too.
Along the same lines though, like because I'm trying to actively trade, I want to be in things that are more of a sure thing. Or like I feel like my odds are good, and I rebought Tezos. One is because I wanted to, because I want exposure to the project, and therefore having already sold it was just me having very, very weak hands. But I saw that Head and Shoulders forming, and I knew that's actually what I was buying. Like because I bought actually before the right shoulder started to form, but when it showed weakness pretty quickly. And like it looked like, hey, this is the right shoulder. I was like, I gotta get out of here. I just don't want to be around. And then, and we still don't know the conclusion of what's going to happen there. I don't think there's a clear pattern here. I don't think that there's like a breakout. But if you're a long-term interested party in Tezos, it just made a 0.618 retrace from its first move. After how long have you been waiting on this, Killer? Like over a year?
For all of eternity. It feels like 10 years, but it's been about like 1.5 or 2.
Yeah, but I think what that's indicative of is like if people needed to get out of Tezos, they did. Like there's some pretty. I think there's some strong hands in this project now, and I think
who's selling right now.
Exactly,
at a 2x ICO 2 years after the fact. I mean, it's like 1.5 years after the fact. But still.
Like I sold because I got like between 60 and 100% gains relative to Bitcoin, and held it for like a couple of months. Like people that held this sucker for 2 years, like they're not going away because it got back to the ICO price. They're not. They're not that weak.
They're the holders you want, pretty much, in a coin.
Yeah. So it's one for me, like I will continue to look for setups. If that means I have to buy Tezos again when it's higher than right now, I don't care. I just want to buy things that I have higher confidence in. And right now I don't have as much direct confidence in it. Of course, every time I've said this to you, Killer, over the past like weeks, then it goes on like a 4-day binge.
Here we go. You hear that, everybody?
So it'll probably be back up to like 2,800 sats or something here soon, just because I'm not in it right now.
Of course, it always works out like that. But I think it's like if you're holding that coin, it's not even like a horrendous thing if it is flat for a little bit, because if you're baking, then you're just kind of adding to your stash and just accumulating during that time. So you can kind of afford to granted it's a small percentage return, like very small. Especially because you probably only be waiting like a few weeks or a month for the next big move, but it's still something. It's kind of nice to know you're applying some fresh capital like back into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I pulled up another chart if we have time to go over one, because it's one that interests me. Sure. Have either of y'all paid attention to BAT?
No,
I have not looked at BAT in a long time.
Yeah, well, that's because it was. It's like 2017 didn't happen with BAT.
Yeah.
So that's another one where like the people that held on to that, like they held on. Versus the dollar, it did a lot of what Bitcoin did. But if you look versus Bitcoin, it never really dumped as hard as other stuff did, but it never really had a pump in a big way. Like so many things just went crazy. So BAT broke up from a forever range, or almost forever. There's some stuff back behind it, but I'm looking on Binance, and at least since January 2018, which was the top of the last cycle, like it broke up from its January 2018 range, and the measured move it has not gotten to, but it like in 1 week went up like 50% or something like that. And then when that Bitcoin move happened, and I bring this up because it's a great sign of like, never be afraid to take that profit, because this baby fully retraced, and now it's a good example of the type. I mean, just I don't know if y'all are looking at this, but like it's right back on the retest of the breakout, and like it's just got some nice looks going on. So it's the type where I want to keep it on my radar now that it fully retraced the initial breakout, which at 2 days into it, you would have been like, no way in 2 weeks is this going to be all the way back there.
Yeah.
But if you're patient enough, like this is basically just as good of a setup now as it was the moment that it broke out. And I think these are the types of coins where you might be able to find like a great risk reward opportunity if you believe in the fundamentals and all that kind of stuff. And then you just look for medium time frames that have some congruence and allow you to enter a trade with a reasonable stop or whatever. But this could end up getting back to that full measured move. Like this could have a near double from here if you play your cards right. I don't know that it will, but like this is a pretty decent risk reward setup, and you're looking at a weekly chart where there's a lot more that can go right, because these candles frankly matter more than some of the lower time frame stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a beauty of a chart, I think, if you're thinking like a long-term entry perspective.
Yeah, I mean, and you just look at something like this, and it's just making, higher low after higher low, and I can try to draw trend lines all I want, but in the end, like it had a low, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low. Like those are interesting. And
Yeah,
if you go
without a
in,
doubt.
you look for what's your setup, what's your reasonable stop to say you were wrong, and you decide if it's the right trade or not. Disclosure, I have no position in this. I played actually a lower time frame one myself, and then my kids had some. They're good traders because they're patient, and they played it, and they got out in safety basically. And I'm glad too, because like if they would have just sat there, it would have fully retraced the whole move that they were in on, and that would have been a bummer.
Alrighty. Ledger, thank you so much, dude. I think we're going to wrap up. But before we go, where can everybody find you online if they want to hear more of your stuff or watch more of your stuff? Just kind of shill all the links you got.
Sure. If you go to ledgerstatus.com, that's got like podcast episodes and all that kind of stuff. Soon I'll be reopening like the Ledger Status Learn stuff if people are interested in that. I did a free market analysis. So I do a weekly market analysis. I go through a list like this on a weekly basis, starting with Bitcoin and moving into alts. But the most recent one is on YouTube for free. It's linked from the most recent podcast, or you just find me on YouTube, whatever. Go to all those places, or on Twitter or wherever, it doesn't matter. But yeah, most of all, just appreciate people hanging in there with us and getting nerdy talking about charts. I find it fun, and I hope some others do too.
Thank you, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, always learn a ton. Thank you so much, dude. All right, everybody. Have a great night or a great day whenever you're listening to this. We will talk to you next week, and happy trading. Bye-bye.